Rain had not stopped for 3 days in the quiet countryside of the United Kingdom, where narrow muddy trails stretched between endless green fields, old stone cottages stood silently under dark gray skies, and cold wind carried the smell of wet earth across the sleeping village. What once looked peaceful and beautiful had slowly turned into a world drowned in water and silence. The countryside trail that villagers used every morning to walk toward the nearby farms was now completely flooded, hidden beneath deep brown rainwater flowing like a restless river. Heavy rain crashed against rooftops all night long, creating a constant echo that filled every corner of the valley. Ancient oak trees bent under the violent wind while sheep gathered together near broken fences, frightened by the storm that refused to end. Small streams that once gently crossed the fields had transformed into dangerous currents, swallowing the roads and cutting the village away from the outside world. The villagers watched helplessly from their windows as the floodwater crept closer to their homes inch by inch. Some families placed sandbags near their doors while others carried furniture upstairs, praying the river would stop rising before sunrise. In the middle of the countryside trail stood an old wooden sign covered in rain, barely visible through the fog, pointing toward the next village that now seemed unreachable. Every step through the flooded path felt dangerous as thick mud pulled at boots and cold water reached above the knees. Tractors struggled to move through the countryside while emergency workers drove carefully under the pounding rain searching for stranded families. The sound of helicopters occasionally broke the silence of the storm, flying low across the village looking for anyone trapped by the flood. Inside the cottages, candles flickered during power cuts while elderly villagers sat quietly beside windows remembering the great floods their grandparents once spoke about decades ago. Children who usually played happily in open fields now watched the storm with wide, fearful eyes, hearing thunder roll endlessly across the dark hills surrounding the countryside. The heavy rain transformed every peaceful scene into something cinematic and haunting, where even the familiar village church appeared lonely beneath the black clouds. Water dripped from broken rooftops, chimneys smoked weakly against the freezing air, and abandoned bicycles floated slowly near flooded garden walls. The countryside trail itself had become almost invisible beneath the floodwater, like a forgotten road swallowed by nature's power. Yet despite the destruction, the villagers remained united. Farmers helped rescue trapped animals while neighbors carried supplies through the rain for elderly people living alone. The local baker opened his small shop before dawn, giving warm bread and tea to exhausted workers trying to protect the village. In the village hall, volunteers spread blankets across the floor for families evacuated from flooded homes. The atmosphere was filled with exhaustion, fear, and uncertainty, but also quiet courage. Outside, rain continued hammering the countryside relentlessly, turning every field into a lake reflecting the stormy sky above. The distant hills disappeared behind thick fog while abandoned cars sat half-submerged near the roadside. Every hour the floodwater rose higher, swallowing more of the countryside trail that generations had walked for decades. Birds no longer sang in the trees. Only the sound of rushing water dominated the landscape. Nightfall made everything even more dramatic as headlights reflected across the floodwater like moving stars. The storm felt endless, as though nature itself had decided to test the strength of the village. Some people stood silently under umbrellas near their gates, watching the dark river flow past their homes, unable to recognize the peaceful countryside they once knew. Yet in the middle of all the chaos, there was something strangely beautiful about the scene. The glowing cottage windows against the rain, the mist rolling across flooded fields, and the determination in the eyes of villagers refusing to abandon their homes. The heavy rain became more than just weather. It became a force that revealed human resilience hidden beneath ordinary lives. Morning eventually arrived with pale gray light spreading across the flooded countryside, but the rain still fell steadily from the sky. The trail remained underwater, the roads destroyed, and the fields completely drowned. Yet smoke once again rose from cottage chimneys as villagers prepared for another difficult day. Boots stepped into cold, muddy water, tractors started slowly in the distance, and rescue teams continued their work across the countryside. Though the flood had changed the village forever, it had also awakened a powerful spirit of unity among the people living there. The flooded countryside trail, once simply a quiet path between green fields, had now become a symbol of survival, endurance, and the unbreakable connection between humans and nature in the heart of the British countryside.